At the beginning of June this year, my father planned to demolish our old house, which had been standing since my grandfather's time, and build a newer and more spacious residence. After nearly a week, my father tirelessly searched the town to find a temporary house for our family to stay while the new home was being constructed, but we couldn't find a suitable place. One Sunday, I went fishing by the riverbank at the edge of the town and stumbled upon an abandoned house. The thatched roof house with 5 compartments nestled amidst a lush garden. At the end of the garden, several old and new graves dotted the area. Adjacent to the garden was a notorious stretch of river, known for its eerie tales. It was said that people would mysteriously drown in this desolate section of the river every year. In front of the house, the grass grew sparsely. The eastern wall was crumbling in many places, providing an ideal habitat for large rats with feet as big as adult human toes. The moss-covered roof tiles were thick with decaying leaves. Being accustomed to the comfortable life in the tranquil countryside, the captivating scenery of the abandoned house at the outskirts of the town captivated me, though I couldn't pinpoint when it started. One day, I suggested to my father that we move to the abandoned house. With just a little renovation, we could have a temporary and spacious place to stay, saving money on rent until our new home was completed. My father told me to meet the village leader to discuss the matter. If it worked out, it would be fantastic. The village leader was Hung Rao, an older brother who was nearly 6 years older than me. Due to his thick mustache resembling a hat strap, he was called Hung Rao. Despite being the village leader, Hung Rao was well-traveled and had a strong personality. After much hesitation, I finally approached him for help with the house relocation. After I finished explaining, Hung Rao stared at me with wide eyes as if looking at a person from another planet. "Are you crazy?" he exclaimed. "If someone could live in this house, they would have done so long ago. In the past, there were self-proclaimed masters, spiritual teachers, even professional boxers who claimed to be able to defeat any opponent. But after staying here for one night, they hurriedly packed up and left. Did the local authorities chase them away, or did the homeowners threaten them? No one chased them away, nor did anyone threaten them. It was the ghosts that appeared and wreaked havoc. Is the house haunted? Do you even need to ask?" Hung took out a pack of Bosto cigarettes, picked one and placed it on his lips. He lit it with a Zippo lighter, took a long drag, and exhaled smoke rings that floated in front of us. He continued speaking like a storyteller. "During the resistance against the French, this house was built on top of a mass grave. As a result, many people who lived in this house either died inexplicably or suffered from mental illnesses. 4 years ago, the youngest daughter of the homeowner, who was studying in high school, suddenly hanged herself. Last year, the landlady fell into severe depression, speaking gibberish all day and sleeping on the tombstones at midnight. Exorcists and monks were brought in to expel the spirits, but they were chased away by the vengeful ghosts, forcing them to abandon their tools and flee. In the end, the owners moved to Saigon to live. This abandoned house is even more infested with malevolent spirits. At night or during the noon hours, occasionally eerie cries, wicked laughter, and chilling sounds emanate from within the house, sending shivers down anyone's spine." I said. "I heard that only people with a sixth sense can encounter ghosts." Hung flicked his cigarette butt away and calmly said, "Sometimes I think so too. Last year, a family came to ask for temporary shelter in the abandoned house. But after staying for one night, they swiftly left and never returned. Earlier this year, a young couple from the countryside came to the town to work as laborers and requested to stay overnight. On the first afternoon when they returned from work, they brought blankets and pillows, swept and cleaned the house. However, the next morning, while I was taking my wife to the market, I saw the couple sitting outside the town's pharmacy, wrapped in blankets. I asked why they didn't sleep in the house and came to sit here. The expression on the husband's face was filled with terror as he trembled and said, 'I encountered a ghost for the first time in my life last night. It was horrifying. My wife and I had to flee for our lives in the middle of the night.' Hung turned to me and encouraged me, saying, 'Regarding your house relocation, just take it easy, I will find another place for you.' Back when I lived in the countryside and was still an elementary school student, I had a reputation for being brave and not believing in supernatural stories. During leisure times, after dinner, the elders from the neighborhood would often gather in my yard to drink tea and tell ghost stories. Through their terrifying and gruesome tales, I learned about various types of ghosts in the spirit world, such as vengeful ghosts, possessed ghosts, graveyard spirits, seductive ghosts, and more. The seductive ghosts were the restless souls of young girls who died prematurely. They would transform into beautiful girls on the streets at midnight, teasing and tempting young men. Listening to the ghost stories told by the elders was fascinating, but when asked if they had ever seen a ghost, they all shook their heads and said they had only heard about them from others. While listening to Hung's ghost stories, I didn't believe that my brother-in-law was just making things up. If it was true, even better. I would explore the house myself to see what kind of ghosts, whether they had round faces or distorted faces. With a curious mind driven by the desire to discover mysterious phenomena in the natural world, one afternoon, I secretly prepared the necessary tools for my venture into the realm of the supernatural. Waiting for the night to fall, I carried my equipment to the designated location. It was the night of the 30th. Pitch black darkness covered the sky. I walked along the barbed wire fence surrounding the house, searching for a side gate. The main gate had been locked by the owners before they left. I couldn't find the side gate. I had no choice but to use pliers to cut a piece of the barbed wire large enough for me to squeeze through. Entering inside, I swept the flashlight around the abandoned house. The atmosphere was gloomy, mysterious, and full of uncertainty. A black crow perched on the branch of a longan tree heard the noise, flapped its wings, and swiftly flew into the darkness. Following the wall to the east, I intended to push open the back door to enter the first room. Suddenly, from the corner of the garden where the graves were located, a beam of light flickered and disappeared. I thought it was phosphorus gas rising from the tomb and encountering combustible air. This phenomenon was not unfamiliar to me. I cautiously stepped into the first room, and under the beam of the flashlight, I saw everyday objects mostly damaged and scattered in a corner. The weathered walls formed peculiar-shaped murals from the rain and sun. The ceiling was covered in spiderwebs, and the floor was rough due to thick layers of dust. I swept the flashlight through the room once more before moving on to the next room when suddenly a chilling scream echoed. Something jumped at me, and the flashlight I was holding slipped from my hand and hit the floor, causing it to go out. In the darkness, I felt around for the flashlight. It was broken, with the bulb shattered. While fumbling to ignite a match and light the candle, I heard the sound of the door creaking and a long sigh right behind me. The breath sounded both near and far, making it difficult to determine. As the candle was lit, I turned around, and through the flickering light, the room remained cold, silent. As I was about to turn away, a small sound made me pause. From the dark corner, a faint green light was directed towards me. Trying to look closely, it turned out to be that damned black cat. I picked up the flashlight and aimed it towards it. The cat let out a meow, and swiftly fled through the door. The second room seemed to serve as a place of worship. In the center, against the right wall, stood a large table. On the tabletop, there were incense bowls and porcelain dishes scattered about. Everything was covered in dust and spiderwebs. The strange thing was that on the opposite wall hung two black and white photos, size 25 by 30 cm, covered in a thin layer of dust. One photo depicted a bare-chested man, wearing shorts, with a foolish and indifferent smile. The second photo was of a young girl dressed entirely in white, with her long hair flowing down to her waist, her face indistinct but prominent against the black background. While I was contemplating these peculiar photos, I heard footsteps from the adjacent room, the sound of whispering, eerie and indistinct, though it was undoubtedly the voice of the spirit realm. Holding the wax candle, I turned back to the room with a strange sound. In the flickering light, I caught a glimpse of an indistinct dark figure vanishing towards the back door. The room fell silent and deserted. Reacting instinctively, I shouted, "Who's there?" In response to the question, from the dark corner of the garden, a wicked laugh burst forth, sounding as if it came from a tomb. My hair stood on end. My whole body was covered in goosebumps. With those images, those sounds, I believed the house was haunted. Brother Hung's words were true. Considering stopping this adventurous and perilous journey, I quickly thought, perhaps my mind was being haunted by illusions or delusions? And even if the house was haunted, the ghosts would only appear to tease and not harm anyone. Strengthening my belief, I decided to continue pushing the door and enter the third room. As I stepped into the third room, I froze in horror, letting out a horrifying scream. My whole body trembled, and my eyes widened as I stared at the decapitated head emitting a faint, chilling green light from a distant corner, slowly advancing towards me. The head had disheveled and tangled hair, a distorted and bloodied face that looked terrifying. At this moment, my soul seemed to leave my body, and in a state of panic, I threw everything I held in my hands and fled in the same direction. Leaving the first room, my foot accidentally kicked something soft and putrid, emanating a strong foul smell. Without caring what it was, I hurriedly ran for my life towards the front yard, squeezing through the thorny iron gate to escape outside. By now, it was well past midnight, and the town was deserted. I ran straight towards the town center without stopping. I paused by a street lamp to catch my breath. Looking down at my 2 feet, I saw blood oozing, and a putrid smell akin to that of a corpse filled the air. Upon closer inspection, my shirt was torn in several places. Both my shoulders were scratched and bleeding from the iron thorns. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. Recalling everything I had heard and seen in that abandoned house, my whole body was on edge. My perspective on the mysterious world of spirituality took a 180-degree turn. From that moment on, I believed in supernatural phenomena, spirits, and a parallel invisible world coexisting with our own. Thanks to those timid but knowledgeable individuals who whispered stories and legends like some sorcerers or the couple who worked as a painter and his wife, the hidden house amidst the overgrown trees, eerie and mysterious, became notorious as the haunted house at the edge of town. Even the bravest of the brave would not dare to pass by the house during the high noon or the dusk hours,